Ject comes from jacere, the Latin verb meaning throw or hurl. To reject something is to throw, or push, it back. To eject something is to throw, or drive, it out, and to inject something is to throw, or squirt, it into something else. Interject, to interrupt a conversation with a comment or remark. His anger was growing as he listened to the conversation, and every so often he would interject a crude comment. According to its Latin roots, interject ought to mean literally throw between. For most of the word's history, however, the only things that have been interjected have been comments dropped suddenly into a conversation. Interjections are often humorous, and sometimes even insulting, and the best interjections are so quick that the conversation isn't even interrupted. Conjecture to guess. He was last heard of in Bogota, and they conjectured that he had met his end in the Andes at the hands of the guerrillas. Formed with the prefix con, together, conjecture means literally to throw together, that is, to produce a theory by putting together a number of facts. So, for example, Columbus conjectured from his calculations that he would reach Asia if he sailed westward, and his later conjecture that there was a northwest passage by sea from the Atlantic to the Pacific over the North American continent was proved correct centuries later. Projection, an estimate of what might happen in the future, based on what is happening now. The president has been hearing different deficit projections all week from the members of his economic team. Projection has various meanings, but what they all have in common is that something is sent out or forward. A movie is projected onto a screen, a skilled actress projects her voice out into a large theater without seeming to shout, and something sticking out from a wall can be called a projection. But the meaning we focus on here is the one used by businesses and governments. Most projections of this kind are estimates of a company's sales or profits, or of the finances of a town, state, or country, sometime in the future. Trajectory, the curved path that an object makes in space, or that a thrown object follows as it rises and falls to Earth. Considering the likely range, trajectory, and accuracy of a bullet fired from a cheap handgun at 100 yards, the murder seemed incredible. Formed with part of the prefix trans, across, trajectory means of hurling across. By calculating the effect of gravity and other forces, the trajectory of an object launched into space at a known speed can be computed precisely. Missiles stand a chance of hitting their target only if their trajectory has been plotted accurately. The word is used most often in physics and engineering, but not always. We can also say, for example, that the trajectory of a whole life may be set in a person's youth, or that a new book traces the long trajectory of the French Empire. Tract comes from trahir, the Latin verb meaning drag or draw. Something attractive draws us toward it. Something distracting pulls your attention away. And when you extract something from behind the sofa, you drag it out. Traction, the friction that allows a moving thing to move over a surface without slipping. The spinning wheels were getting no traction on the ice, and we began to slip backward down the hill. A tractor is something that pulls something else. We usually use the word for a piece of farm machinery, but it's also the name of the part of a big truck that includes the engine and the cab. Tractors get terrific traction because of their powerful engines and the deep ridges on their huge wheels. A cross-country skier needs traction to kick herself forward, but doesn't want it to slow her down when she's gliding, so the bottom of the skis may have a fish scale surface that permits both of these at the same time. Retract, 1. To pull back something into something larger. 2. To take back something said or written. She was forced to retract her comment about her opponent after it was condemned in the press. The prefix back, gives retract the meaning of draw back. Just as a cat retracts its claws into its paws when they aren't being used, a public figure may issue a retraction in order to say that he or she no longer wants to say something that has just been said. But it's sometimes hard to know what a retraction means. Was the original statement an error or an outright lie? Sometimes a politician even has to retract something that everyone actually assumes is the truth. Thousands of citizens were forced to publicly retract their wrong ideas by the Soviet government in the 1930s and the Chinese government in the 1960s. Someone wrongly accused may demand a retraction from his accuser, though today it seems more likely that he'll just go ahead and sue. Protracted, drawn out, continued, or extended. No one was looking forward to a protracted struggle for custody of the baby. With its prefix pro, forward, protracted usually applies to something drawn out forward in time. A protracted strike may cripple a company, a protracted rainy spell may rot the roots of vegetables, and a protracted lawsuit occasionally outlives the parties involved. Before the invention of the polio vaccines, polio's many victims had no choice but to suffer a protracted illness and its after-effects. Intractable, not easily handled, led, taught, or controlled. Corruption in the army was the country's intractable problem, and for many years all foreign aid had ended up in the colonel's pockets. Intractable simply means untreatable, and even comes from the same root. The word may describe both people and conditions. A cancer patient may suffer intractable pain that doctors are unable to treat. An intractable alcoholic goes back to the bottle immediately after drying out. Homelessness, though it hardly existed 30 years ago, is now sometimes regarded as an intractable problem.